Welcome to Mississippi History from a Christian Perspective. I'm your host, Tracy Robinson. Although very little military action took place in Mississippi until 1862, there was activity going on along the Mississippi coast as early as January 1861. One of the first actions which engaged Mississippi troops was the capture of Fort Adams on Ship Island, just off the coast of Mississippi. Fort Adams was a refueling point for Union ships. In September, Union troops regained control of Ship Island and later captured Biloxi in December. With the Union's recapture of Fort Adams, its navy, under Admiral David Farragut, was able to make its way to New Orleans in 1862 and occupy the city. Further up, Union forces also captured Natchez. The Union Army first entered North Mississippi in the spring of 1862 by way of the Tennessee River. They were headed for Corinth, Mississippi in order to control the major north, south, and east-west rail lines running through the town. As the Union Army approached Corinth, they were met in battle by Confederate troops near Shiloh Church, just over the Tennessee line. Union General Don Carlos Buell led his troops against Confederate General Albert Sidney Johnston. Johnston was killed in the conflict and was later replaced by General Pierre G. Beauregard. The Union Army captured Corinth, Mississippi, and the Confederates retreated to Tupelo. Union General Rosecrans captured Holly Springs. Confederate General Van Dorn attempted to recapture Corinth, but was repulsed. By December of 1862, the Confederate troops, outnumbered and outgunned, had withdrawn to Grenada, Mississippi. Oxford, Water Valley, and Coffeyville were taken by the troops of Union General Ulysses S. Grant. At this point, North Mississippi was in the hands of the Union Army. On June 5th of 1862, Union forces took Memphis, Tennessee, near the Mississippi line. This enabled the Union Army to control both ends of the Mississippi River. The only major river city left in the Confederate hands was the city of Vicksburg. Vicksburg was nicknamed the Gibraltar of the Confederacy because of the Southern belief that the city would never fall. However, Union troops controlling the Mississippi River were able to focus on Vicksburg with a relentless attack from all sides. The attack on Vicksburg began on May 18th of 1862. Unlike New Orleans, the city sat on a high bluff overlooking the Mississippi River. This made the town a much more difficult obstacle. On the north, swamp and woodland protected Vicksburg. Only the south and east sides of the town required maximum defenses, so troops had to be concentrated only on these two sides. Heavy guns were concentrated in these directions. General Grant initially bypassed the direct assault on Vicksburg and attacked below the city, capturing Port Gibson and Grand Gulf. He then opted to move against Jackson. In the meantime, Union General Benjamin Henry Grierson set out from LaGrange, Tennessee on a cavalry raid headed toward the Southern Railroad at Newton, Mississippi. This railroad was the only Confederate supply line into Vicksburg. After Jackson, Mississippi fell to Grant's troops, the Mississippi state government relocated to Enterprise, Mississippi. Later, the state government was forced to repeatedly move to Columbus, Meridian, and eventually to Macon. The city of Jackson was almost totally destroyed. Most of its major buildings and businesses were burned. All that remained of the once bustling city were the charred chimneys. Jackson was appropriately nicknamed Chimneyville. After Jackson's capture, Grant moved Union troops again downriver towards Vicksburg. The city of Vicksburg was now ensnared under Union siege. Union gunboats bombarded the city from the river as the Union troops battered it from the other three sides. With the railroad supply already cut by Grierson's raiders, the Confederates occupying Vicksburg could not hope to hold out. People who remained in Vicksburg were forced to leave their homes and take refuge in caves along the river bluffs. The siege of Vicksburg lasted over a month. On July 4th of 1863, Confederate General Pemberton surrendered his troops to Union General Grant. Many of Mississippi's troops went to Dalton, Georgia after the capture of the Mississippi River. The Confederate Army took up winter quarters there, but soldiers came under the influence of chaplains and missionaries. These ministers stayed busy preaching nightly, giving out tracts and Bibles, and assisting the sick and wounded in the name of Christ. Thousands of soldiers, one by one, prepared for eternity by accepting Christ as their personal Savior. Spiritual revival was further supported and encouraged by political and military leadership within the Confederacy. President Davis, General Robert E. Lee, and General Stonewall Jackson were all men of Christian faith, and they urged those serving under them to answer to the high calling of God. In spite of the bitterness that led to the beginning of the war, spiritual revival swept over the Southern states. This change in spiritual climate was clearly evident even after the war. Nearly every conversion made in the Confederate Army camp meetings resulted in a man that was unwavering in his faith. Many former soldiers felt the hand of God so strongly in their lives that they surrendered to the ministry. Colleges and seminaries were filled with former Confederate soldiers who had become wholly committed to the cause of Christ. There were positive things that came about as a result of the Civil War. The most notable benefit was the end of slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation, issued January the 1st of 1863, freed all slaves in the states that had taken up arms against the Union. Then, in 1865, Congress ratified the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, which permanently abolished slavery from every state in the United States of America. In our next lesson, we'll discuss what happened after the war during the Reconstruction of the Southern states.